Aloha and welcome to Power in Partnership, our online master series where we explore how to reignite connection, grow conscious partnership, and focus on what matters most. My name is Amy Elizabeth Gordon. I'm delighted to join you once again as your host in this free online series for all couples who are interested in tending to that space between. And today I'm delighted to introduce Tammy Nelson. I'd love for her to say a couple of words to get the camera on her, and then I'll give a lengthy introduction.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so grateful to be here. And thank you, Amy, for what you're doing in the world. And I really appreciate how beautiful and empowered and alive you are, and how present you are for everyone today.
Mahalo. Thank you so much, Tammy. Well, many of you may already know Tammy. She's an international expert in this field of sex and relationship therapy. She's a certified, oh gosh, I was looking at the list. You and I share some similarities in terms of our imago work. I didn't realize you were also a licensed substance abuse counselor, alcohol and drug counselor as well, and an author, and a licensed psychotherapist, and really holding that space, not only in the international field of getting the word out there through many, many publications and blogs and information that's out there, but also in sustaining your private practice and working with people of all genders, all orientations, and all ages, really making a case for love, for healing, passion, really helping them in all ways. Am I getting you, Tammy?
That sounds great.
That sounds like you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Great. Thank you. Well, as we do with all of our intentional interviews, we'll just take a few moments. I invite us both, as well as the audience listening, to just settle in to this moment. And if you're willing and able to lower the gaze or close the eyes, really inviting the breath to draw in a little deeper through the nose, and exhaling for a little longer than the length of the inhale. And inhaling all that has already transpired today. And exhaling, releasing fully what's no longer needed in this moment. Inhaling all the other future plans, thoughts, ideas for the rest of the day. And exhaling fully, trusting that they'll be there when the time comes. And finally, inhaling the sweetness of this moment right here, right now. And exhaling, surrendering to that ever-present presence of gravity that holds us in this moment as we once again rededicate ourselves to our own greater well-being, to expanding our own wisdom, and to sharing that deep, deep wisdom that we hold within. And from this space, Tammy, I invite us to come into a bow. I'd love to book in the interviews, my sessions with people, just to honor that space between. Yeah. So I'll offer you some sentence stems to serve as a foundation for our interview. As I'm sitting here, I'm experiencing.
I'm experiencing gratitude for you to help me sort of be grounded in the moment. How lovely that is. I really appreciate that in you. And I appreciate, what's coming up for me is how my focus is really around, and we can talk more about this, but the idea around integration and integrating a lot of different things. So my focus is integrative sex and couples therapy, but what I mean by integration is something that you just did, is sort of integrating the past, the future, and really coming into the present and integrating on a lot of different levels. So whatever's happening, not just in time, but in our the stories that we're making up, sort of the narrative of what's happening, and then what we're feeling, our emotions, which can sometimes be intense, like my emotional place is big right now, and then what's underneath all of that, which is our intuition, that sort of knowing place, the things that we know, and that's a very quiet place. And so what you just did is sort of a good way for me to get out of my head, which is all, spinning with stories, and then my emotion, which is kind of calmer now, and then down into that more intuitive place. I appreciated that.
Wonderful. I'm really hearing that appreciation for that pause to integrate, which is so much a part of your work and your view, your perspective on things, and for you to recognize what's going on internally for you with lots of mental chatter, stories, big emotions, the settling in, and that deep, quiet foundation of the intuition. Am I getting you? Yeah. Is there more about that right now?
I think the concept of intuition has been so downplayed in our field because we're at this place in our culture where psychotherapy is trying to be legitimized as a science for the past 100 years. And now we're crossing over into a place where sex therapy for the first time is being seen for the past 20 years as trying to disassociate from the idea of surrogacy and sexology, where it's body focused. So we're trying to legitimize as sex therapists as people that are different than sex workers, which is sometimes how the public sees people. And so we're in this interesting time, which is maybe where people were in Vienna 100 years ago, where they were talking about like talk therapy. What is that? Like that has no place at all in science. And one of the things I've noticed lately is that psychology programs, because I've been looking at colleges with my daughter, are no longer in the social science department. They're all in the science department. So psychology is now a science. I signed up for all these behavior and social science tours with my daughter, and they're like, no, you're in the wrong department. Wow. I was like, that's fascinating. So now psychology is legitimately all science. And yet sex therapy is still in this place of trying to legitimize itself by a lot of different things, and we can talk about that. But the thing that strikes me so strongly is that we're now at this place as well where we're arguing about the concept of intuition, which is a very feminine energy. It's the knowing about, should you go down the alley? Should you get in the elevator? Should you go on the date? It's that inner gut sense of what's right, what's true. And it has nothing to do with what you cognitively know about something or someone, or about your partner, or about where you want to go to college, or about what you know about this moment. And it really doesn't have anything to do with what you feel about it. Feelings aren't necessarily facts. Like what you feel about something sometimes can steer you in the right direction, but sometimes feelings are they go, they peak and then they leave, even the good feelings. So feelings aren't really your intuition. Your intuitive sense is something even below that now is being studied with peer-reviewed research. It's being legitimized when we talk about energy psychotherapy. There's a huge conference, the American Comprehensive Energy Psychology Conference, which now is talking about NIMH grants for energy psychology studies for trauma and for work with couples, talking about that space in between us that actually really exists, that we've always intuitively known about, but now they're studying it.
Yeah.
And they're studying about like the healing that actually happens between people physically, emotionally, and intuitively. I'm really fascinated with that because I think that is our next wave of study for couples therapy, for sex therapy, for psychotherapy. And I also think that there's a lot of pushback because it's a very left brain sort of male function to be able to say, and I don't mean, I'm not dissing men, I'm just saying male, female energy, to be able to say, well, if we can't see it and hold it in our hands, then it doesn't exist.
Right.
Yeah.
I love hearing you describe more about our feelings are not facts, and to drop below that, our feelings are not always our intuition, that's at a deeper level, and just how the whole research or the science behind it and trying to legitimize it. And I really invite you, Tammy, to download or listen to as many of these interviews as you can, because that really is percolating to the surface over and over again. the energy work, the necessity of the embodied presence, and the ability to heal and tend to that space between. And so I get that excitement too. I have that vicarious thrill with you of, yes, where are we headed with this? And how fascinating this tour that you're doing with your daughter, looking for schools, and how psychology is in the science realm. It's my quick background of heading to graduate studies at Naropa in Buddhist psychology, back in the 90s. And it was, way out there. It was woo-woo. And now mindfulness is on the cover of Time magazine. And this, the research and the science is supporting what we know about the neuropsychology and the ability to rewire. And so it's all coming together. And so that, I think, is perfect for our discussions today around growing conscious partnership, that there is validity in this, there is a lot of hope. And so my next sentence stem for you, Tammy, is where I'd like to be, either at the end of my life or the end of my career. For some people, those are one and the same. I don't know about you.
No, I'm really clear about this as I get older. And the older I get and the clearer I get about it, it becomes a little bit more concrete how I want to express it. But I really feel like my whole mission in life is around this idea of integrity. And by integrity, I don't mean honesty and dishonesty. What I mean is integrity to me means being able to integrate all the parts of you. So, I feel like we're in a culture that encourages compartmentalization. That, we feel shame. We shame people, particularly men, around sex or children or anyone that expresses themselves in a way that's non-normative, and whenever you feel shame, you split off a part of yourself and you hide it, and you compartmentalize it and you dismember it, you disintegrate it. And usually by the time people are coming to see me for psychotherapy in their middle age, they have totally lost the sense of who they are as people, particularly men. And that idea of disintegration is the exact opposite of 1,000 years ago when we lived in like shamanic communities, where when people turned into sort of their sexual age, sort of like bar mitzvah age, if you will, or the age of adulthood, the age when we become sexual, they would be actually split off from the tribe and sent out onto a vision quest or whatever, and through hallucinogenics or deprivation to a dark night of the soul, they would find those split off parts of themselves through some kind of intuitive experience, through a spirit guide or whatever they called it at the time. The idea was to remember the dismembered parts of yourself, to reintegrate, to open those compartments, to find those parts of yourself. And only then, and it was usually men, only then could you be whole, and would you be a man that could then go back to the tribe and contribute to the community, to society. And I think we do the exact opposite to men and to people today. I think we encourage people from the moment they become sexual to hide, to feel shame, to hide it on their iPhone, to sneak their porn. And we tell them, what you want is wrong. It's too much. It's not the right kind. It's too sexual. It's sex addiction. It's sexually compulsive. It's not emotionally connected. It's not attached. You shouldn't be part of this normal society. There's a range of gender normative sexuality that you don't fit into. And people have been hiding, compartmentalizing so that they don't feel like they can live in integrity. And I think that it's not just the idea of integrating who you are sexually, but living in integrity means this is who I am. Yes, I'm a therapist, but yes, I have a family life. I have my own sexual life. I have my own problems, and I have my childhood. And the reason I'm saying that is because I've been working on, I've written several books, all nonfiction, and millions of articles and blog posts, and been published a lot. But I never talked about my childhood, and I never talked about my real life. And I recently wrote a memoir, and I felt like it was the first time in my life that I was integrating like the parts of me that I had compartmentalized. And there was nothing particularly traumatic. Many people have had more trauma than I have. but my childhood was kind of weird. And I always felt like, well, it's just not something you talk about. Like, you don't talk about your past. You become this other person. You graduate from high school, you go to college, you become a different person. You graduate from college, you get married, you become a different person. You're a different person with your kids than you are before you have kids. Then your kids go to college and you're a different person. Then your kids move home after college and they're a different person. And I feel like my life's mission is to integrate all the parts of me so that no matter who I'm with, whether it's you or my clients or my kids, there's no part of me that I can say I'm ashamed of, I'm hiding, I'm not intuitively connected to, or I'm afraid to talk about. So in other words, if I feel like, you know what, I'm an incredibly intuitive person, I'm not going to hide that part because I'm afraid someone's going to challenge me and say, well, that's not really science. Or I'm not going to deny a part of my childhood, or I'm not going to deny the fact that I was divorced. This is my second marriage because I'm a couples therapist. You know, for years I didn't talk about that.
Right.
And I really feel like that is my life's mission, is to talk about integrity as integration and to work on integrative relationship therapy. That is the crisis of our generation. If you think about, you know, the crisis of integrity in our government and fake news and everyone lying, you can't trust anyone anymore. So trust and shame and integrity is our goal for our generation and for our children's generation if we're going to survive as a society.
Yes.
That's all I have to say on that.
Woo, I feel it. I feel it. We call it chicken skin here in Hawaii. I got it. I feel it. It's and it resonates in what we also call our intuition here is called the na'au. And so there's this sense of be in the na'au, live in the na'au. And I get it. And what you're saying makes so much sense. And I guess that brings forth the next sentence stem, which is one thing I can do to help. What's one thing that you do that you help with your clients in order to facilitate that integration?
So I think one thing I do, although it may come out differently with each person, is to help people to really tell their story. Mm-hmm. So, you know, one thing I do is I have this online group where I help people write books. So mm-hmm. It might be therapists, it could be, it doesn't matter who it is. Mm-hmm. But that's part of helping people tell their story. Whether it's in couples therapy, where I help people tell each other their story, or even just admit out loud to themselves, like this is their story, or to talk about this is the story I'm making up right in this moment about you, about us, about what I think happened in the past, what I think is happening in the future. I think that's what I can do to help people, is that I'm really good at helping people figure out what is the story that you're making up right in this moment. And, you know, you can actually write about it, make money off it. Yeah. I figured that one. But it doesn't even matter. Like sometimes the minute you figure out the story, then it changes to a different story. And that's it's really, really a valuable thing in couples therapy, since we're talking about couples. Because you think about the story you're making up about yourself and the story you're making up about what it means to your partner, and then the story you make up about what it means to your relationship, and then your partner does the same thing. That's 6 different stories in the room, not including the story that your therapist is making up about each of you. That's a lot of stories.
Right. It is a lot of story. There's a lot of channels trying to get tuned in at once, and it can create a whole lot of static. And I really hear that invitation for people to own their story through a writing practice, through talking about it in therapy, through sharing it in a couples dialogue. And I know you've inspired me, Tammy. Years ago, I did one of your online write your story things, and I'm working on my memoir, and I've been sitting on it for so long. It's just like, I didn't know this gestation period could go this long. But I think it's because I'm trying to reach that point of integration where I've got it all figured out and this is who I am. But what I just heard was that invitation that even once that's done, I'll be a different person. And so I appreciate that refreshing reminder that we are continuing to evolve or devolve, as the case may be, and to integrate our stories, to bring back those lost or hidden aspects of self, to be whole, to let go of the shame, the blame, the criticism, to let go of that fear of who I am and speaking my truth. And I introduce myself in recovery meetings as a sober woman of integrity. And so that's one of my favorite lines, is that notion of integrity and the significance of it. And to think about it in terms of integration is another perspective of that. So I'm finding that particularly helpful. So thank you for that. And I'm curious, what is the next sentence stem of what matters most? But I think you really spoke to that. It sounds like integrity and that integrative track is what matters most. Would you add any more to that at this point?
I think, what you said is interesting about, am I evolving or devolving? I think for me, it's like revolving, like we revolve around, it's sort of like, the rings of an onion, I guess they would say in recovery or something. And but it's more like sort of like a DNA strand, you get closer and closer to remember who you really are. Like all the other stuff on the outside is the story. And then you get closer and closer, and you integrate that as you go around and around and around until you get to the core of sort of your meaning and your purpose about why you're here. And all the other stuff, so you sort of let go of. And it's not that you forget it or dismiss it, because those things are important. But if you think about like who you were as a teenager, if you separate and individuate in adolescence like you're supposed to do from your family, then you can evolve from that part of you, and you don't act like that anymore. And you sort of, you remember, you reintegrate those parts of you. But if you haven't really been successful at that point of your life, then you go through what I call second adolescence, like later on, and you start to act the same stuff out, but you do it with your spouse or your committed partner. So then you start to sort of parentify your partner, and you act out, and you're like, I don't have to tell you what I'm doing, and I'm going to text who I want, and I'm going to cheat on you because I can have as many partners as I want. You can't tell me what to do. And like you start to act like an adolescent with your partner. And I think the idea here is to sort of remember all those parts of you. Like, I still feel like an adolescent, 55, and I still like to go to concerts and party. I'm just exhausted. I just can't do it anymore like I used to. But I don't want to dismiss those parts of myself. I don't want to dismember those parts of me. I want to remember them and revolve around them over and over to find those parts that are so important to integrate. I love how you said to live in the now. How do you say live in the now?
Now. It's N-A, and then we have the okina, which is like a glottal stop, like in uh-oh. So it's na-ow, A-U. And I love it too. It's just, it speaks volumes of a perspective of living, from the intuition, from that place of internal guidance. Yeah. And I love what you just said, because you just called my perfectionist to task. And so anyone else listening at this moment who might continually be checking in on the story you tell yourself of, am I evolving or devolving in this moment? In that is inherent judgment of right or wrong, good or bad. And so when I heard you say revolving, it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to come around this again. And so that was just really, once again, I'm really appreciating this interview, Tammy, in so many ways. It's refreshing. It's inspiring. Just like, oh, I don't have to let go of that chronic internal judgment, which for me creates more static in my loving relationship with my partner, because I want to do the right thing. And sometimes I get so sick of doing the right thing and taking the higher road, I want to do the wrong thing. And then when I want to vaporize him, I have to recognize, oh, choosing to want to vaporize my partner is a choice. Do I really need to do that? What's the story I'm telling myself? Pulling back, getting more empowered in those choices. So thank you so much. I'm noticing the time on our interview, and I want to honor one thing I appreciate. How would you finish that sentence, Stem?
Oh my gosh. Well, one thing I appreciate is you, because you are so insightful and intuitive and in touch with all of this stuff, and I really appreciate that about you. And plus, it feels like you just have a big heart. So as much as you're saying I'm a perfectionist, I also think you have like this really sweet part of you that is not judging other people. You're probably much harder on yourself than you are on anyone else.
You got me. You got me. And because you see my big heart, that means you have one too. Because if you spot it, you got it, right, Tammy? So I want to honor our interview today and get a bow to the space between. Thank you for your time today.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.